I want to talk about nature, weather, and climate change. Are you familiar with any of these topics? Nature? No? Okay, so which words come to your mind related to these topics? For example, if we talk about nature, give me some words, some elements of nature. Those.
Nature.
What is this, for example?
Forest.
A forest. Okay. What else?
Animals.
Yeah, animals. What about what we breathe?
Rivers.
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 Insects.
Yeah, insects can be. What is the Popocatépetl?
Mountain.
It sounds more or less the same in English as in Spanish.
Volcano.
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 Volcanoes. What else? When we talk about the weather, what is the weather? Yeah. What do we when we talk about the weather? Which elements of the weather we talk about? Like this.
Rain.
The rain,
Sun.
the sun,
Clouds.
clouds. What about when we are working here and everything starts moving? What is that?
Earthquake.
An earthquake. And what about climate change? Have you heard about climate change? Yes, it's a very trendy topic, famous topic. Everybody talks about that and it's important. So, where happens climate change? Where here, where do we live in this big round ball? How do we call that? How do we call our
The
planet?
disappear of the ice on poles, or is it pole?
Poles.
Poles.
The poles. Also, well, ice is important. It's in. What else? So how do we call our planet? Earth. Earth always with capital letter. Whenever you write Earth, you have to write it with
Okay.
capital letter. What about
Oceans.
what else?
Oceans.
Oceans, of course. Okay, and something the most important thing also is, what do we breathe? Breathe.
Air.
are the most important issues facing our city?
Issue is problem or solution?
Issue is asunto, not a problem, not a solution, but like a situation. Okay. So what is happening here in our city? About around nature, weather, climate change. What about the weather these days?
More pollution?
Well, there has been very polluted
Huh?
in the air.
India?
The air has been very polluted. And how's the weather like? Is it cold?
Yeah. Where it's sad. It's crazy.
The weather is crazy. Sometimes it is cold,
Rain,
sometimes
cold,
it is hot,
sunny.
or sunny, or rains. Okay, yes, very good. And what about the no circula?
¿Cómo?
Well, you say there's no word. Another teacher told me that they say no circulation or my car doesn't circulate. There's no word for them to use in the US or in Europe because their cities are not polluted like ours. But what about that? What is happening with that? It's because there are too many cars, right? What else do you think is polluting the city?
Maybe some factories.
Some factories? Yeah, exactly, factories. Have you heard that bueno, sigan malísimo. Oh, wait, I don't remember the word. Well, let's see. Now, question number 2. What do you think are the most important issues facing your country? In all the country, not only in the city.
The culture of the people is not favorable. Favorable is more positive.
Okay. What about, well, here in the city we have a bad quality of air, but in the whole country, what other things can be polluted? Or what could be important? For example, when we go to the beach, we find a lot of trash on the sand. And sometimes that trash or rubbish, it comes from the sea. It also comes from the sea. So, what is happening there? Why can you tell me the seas are dirty? Why? See, just because we put rubbish in the sea, you know, we go and we leave wastes all over. Wastes son desechos, like trash, but wastes are more like radioactive wastes. talking about issues, then maybe we can talk about climate change, because this is a more global thing. This is not only happening in Mexico, it's happening in the whole planet. Okay? So, let's read a text about climate change. And first, I want you to skim. Do you know what skim means? It's like, no, skim with it's like reading, but very, very quickly. Don't read to understand the text, but read and look for words that look unfamiliar to you, for words that you have never seen before. Very, very quickly. I think we should do it by bits. You do this one, all this, and you, Adriana, do up to this paragraph, and I'll do the third one. Ready? Okay. Ready, Adriana? No? Okay, so which words do you find on the first paragraphs?
Brush.
Average, okay? So, which other one? Which other one?
In the first paragraph.
Yeah, or in the second one. Which other words?
Mm.
that's the only one?
Había otra. Environmental.
Environmental. Second paragraph? Or
No,
what is it?
third.
Third paragraph. Okay. And what about anthropogenic? Okay. So let's see. Average. Average is when I say something like, for example, in Suntory, they serve really good food, okay? In Moshi Moshi, they serve good food. These are Japanese restaurants. And perhaps in Sushito, they serve average food. What do you think it means? Oh, maybe it's not as clear. Okay, when I say the average of cars that circulate every day are 2,500. No? That's a difficult word to explain. Maybe I can say my average in school was 8.0. Promedio, exactly. Okay, now we are going to see here when we read what does it refer to. Then this other word, environmental. Well, environment, do you know what environment means? Environment, the environment? No? So environment is el medio ambiente. Very good. Okay, and well, here environment is medio ambiente. Environmental here is an adjective, and we're going to see how is it working. And anthropogenic. Well, anthropogenic is something caused or produced by humans. Okay? Something that we humans are producing. And here is also used as an adjective, okay? It's qualifying global warming. Okay, now in the second part, which words did you find? Okay, anthropogenic. Where is it? Okay, or rather. Rather than is to make a comparison. Do you remember that we were saying, oh well, I don't know if I taught you that, or Julissa. Here. When I say, rather than saying became an issue rather than the terminal. It's to say this is to say something instead of something else. Do you know what instead means? Say something instead of something else. En lugar de. So rather than would be to express that something, we prefer to say something than the other thing, okay? Now, in the second page, I think that challenges. Do you know what is a challenge? Here. Okay, challenges. Yes, that word. Do you know it? No? A challenge is when I have for example, my challenge is to learn Russian. More than a purpose is something. Exactly, desafío. And then there is this word here, core. Core. So core is a synonym for center. Yeah, well, it's like centers. It could be something principal saying that it is the center of something. Okay. And then thoroughly. Exactly below core, it says thoroughly. Thoroughly is a synonym for exhaustively. Yes, exhaustive. Exhaustivamente. So this is an adverb. Thoroughly is an adverb. Remember that there are many words that end in y, ly, and they are adverbs like slowly. And then, again, anthropogenic, and I think that's all. Those are the most difficult words. Okay, so let's start reading paragraph by paragraph. The intention of this text is that we get to know new vocabulary, that we understand difficult words, okay? And that we can understand what the sentence means without thinking of these difficult words, because now that we know them, it should be easier to understand, okay? So, who wants to read first, the first paragraph?
Climate change. What is climate?
Climate.
Climate change.
Very good.
To understand climate change, it's important to recognize the difference between weather and climate.
Climate.
Climate. Okay, climate. Yep.
Okay.
Whether it is the temperature, precipitation, rain, hail, sleet, and snow, and wind will change hour by hour and day by day. Climate is the average weather and the nature of its variation that we experience over an extended period of time. Accordingly, fluctuations over periods shorter than a few decades, such as El Niño, do not represent climate change. Climate.
This doesn't.
No.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's fine. It doesn't sound like a mate. Well, if you see that, just mate, just mate,
Climate.
you say mate. But if you see climate, you don't say climate, you say climate.
A ver, pues.
Climate. Yeah, this is interesting because some words, when you learn them, like this climate, you are not supposed to read it again wrong because you already know that it doesn't say mate. That's not the pronunciation. Okay. Little by little. Okay, so Adriana, did you understand paragraph 1? And you? Were you
Yeah.
concentrated on reading, or were you really reading and understanding at the same time?
In this occasion, I'm concentrating in reading.
Reading, okay, right. Okay, so listen to me. To understand climate change, it is important to recognize the difference between weather and climate. Weather is the temperature, precipitation, rain, hail, sleet, and snow, and wind, which change hour by hour and day by day. Climate is the average weather and the nature of its variations that we experience over an extended period of time. Accordingly, fluctuations over periods shorter than a few decades, such as El Niño, do not represent climate change. So, what is climate change? With your words.
Is the natural process of the earth?
Well, but according to this,
In your words, according to
according to the text. So what here there is another strange word, slit. But what about the words in parentheses? Rain, is it clear? Yes. Hail. Yes. What does hail mean? When big pieces of ice fall, rounded pieces of ice.
Granizo?
Granizo, very good. Sleet.
Sleet? No.
Sleet is also ice, but it's only like escarcha. And it's what we know as aguanieve, but I think we never use those words here. Aguanieve? Yes? Es when you see it like escarcha en los coches, ¿no? Como que parecen vidriecitos. Eso sería sleet. And snow. Snow is clear?
Okay.
Snow? Yes. Snow, yeah, okay. So climate has to do with weather. Climate and weather are not synonyms. This is the important thing that is saying the text. Okay, so where does it says that? Where it says climate is the average weather and the nature of its variations that we experience over an extended period of time. Okay, so this is also an important concept that to understand something as climate change, it has to happen over an extended period of time, okay? That's why it says that, what does it say about El Niño? It represents? No, it doesn't represent. Okay, very good. Also, okay, in this part where it says accordingly, fluctuations over periods shorter than a few decades, blah blah, what is accordingly referring to? It's like in Spanish, accordingly. When I say in Spanish, de acuerdo con esto, yo diría, de acuerdo con esto, las fluctuaciones sobre periodos más cortos de pocas décadas como el Niño no representan un cambio climático. So what am I referring to? To the first paragraph. Okay, so this word doesn't mean something itself. It means that according to all these that you read before, then they give an example, fluctuations over periods, blah, blah, blah. Okay? So you have to make, sometimes in English, some connections of some words because they are not mentioning again certain ideas. Or for example, when they use object and object pronouns. Okay, let's see if we find an example here about that. So in paragraph number 2, can you read, Adriana, please?
Climate change is caused by factors such as biotic processes, variation in solar radiation received by Earth, plate tectonics, and volcanic eruptions. Certain human activities have also been identified as significant causes of recent climate change.
Okay.
Often referred to as global warming.
Okay, referred. Okay, very good. Okay, so which factors cause climate change?
Variations in solar radiation.
Biotic processes.
Biotic processes.
Biotic processes.
Okay, very good. And so what does it say about human activities?
Identified as significant causes of recent climate change.
Okay, and well, what we were saying, so climate change is also referred as global warming, okay? Okay, now number 3. The terms sometimes is used to refer specifically to climate change caused by human activity, as opposed to changes in climate that may have resulted as part of Earth's natural processes. In this sense, especially in the context of environmental policy, the term climate change has become synonymous with anthropogenic global warming. Within scientific journals, global warming refers to surface temperature increases, while climate change includes global warming and everything else that increasing greenhouse gas levels affect. Did you understand this paragraph? What about this word is difficult, journals? Where it says within scientific journals. Do you know that word? What?
Jornadas? No?
What did you say? Igual, jornadas? No, this is like a diary, like a record.
¿Periódico?
No, like como un diario, pero como un diario, como un registro, me refiero. Like a register. No, no creo que se entiende. Okay, so climate change climate change has become synonymous with anthropogenic global warming? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, and what about global warming? Is global warming a synonym of climate change?
Yes. Climate change includes global warming and everything else that increasing greenhouse gas levels affects.
Okay, well, it says it includes, but it doesn't
Includes.
say, it is exactly climate change, okay? And now, what does mean? So here, environmental policy. What do you think environmental policy mean? We already know what environmental means, right?
Política ambiental.
Exactly, política ambiental, right? And where it says anthropogenic global warming, what does that mean? If we know anthropogenic is something caused by humans, what
La
do,
rápida producción humana global.
warming no es producción. Warming es calentamiento. So this is an adjective, anthropogenic here, and it's qualifying global warming. So it means that anthropogenic, that is something that is caused by humans, then we will be saying that global warming is caused by humans. If it is like if it said beautiful global warming, what would be beautiful? The global warming. And in this case, anthropogenic is that something caused, well, because if we don't think the meaning is very difficult to understand, something caused by humans is causing the global warming. Well, we are referring to that. That is the cause of the global warming. Okay. Now, climatic change versus climate change. This is getting more difficult because there are two terms, climatic change and climate change. Would you like to read, Carlos, please?
Climatic change versus climate change. In 1966
Again.
in 1966
1966.
1966
Okay.
the World Meteorological Organization, WMO, proposed the term climatic change to encompass all forms of climatic variability on time scales longer than 10 years, whether the cause was natural or anthropogenic. Climatic was used as an adjective to describe this kind of change, as opposed to political or economic change. When it was realized that human activities had a potential to drastically alter the climate. The term climate change replaced climatic change as the dominant term to reflect an anthropogenic cause. Climate change was incorporated in the in the title of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, and the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC. Climate change, used as a noun, become an issue. No.
Issue, yes.
An issue rather than the technical description of changing weather.
Okay.
Siento como de primaria, ¿no?
Okay, again, this word, which one was it? Activity, change, replaced. Okay. Okay, it's not. Well, read again. When it was realized. Here,
When it was realized that human activities
Okay.
No. Had
Yeah, it's okay.
had
Human.
human
The H sounds, okay?
Human.
In English, the
Human,
H
yeah.
sounds human. And okay. So, did you understand the text, Adriana? What he read, or is it a confusing text, even if? Okay, let's go part by part. First line. In 1966, the World Meteorological Organization, WMO, proposed the term climatic change to encompass all forms of climatic variability on time scales longer than 10 years, whether the cause was natural or anthropogenic. What does encompass mean?
En comparación.
No. If I say encompass all,
En conjunto.
yeah, like abarcar. Encompass is abarcar. So, this organization said that with the word climatic change, what was it going to encompass?
Forms of climatic variability on time scales longer than 10 years.
Okay. And what does it mean whether whether no se escribe así, so
Whether the cause was natural or anthropogenic.
So what does weather mean in that context?
Como puede ser.
Exactly, because it's trying to say something or another thing, whether natural or anthropogenic. So what does this mean in general? Now in your own words, you can tell me what this sentence is in your own words.
The WMO define the significance of
The
climate.
meaning.
The meaning. The meaning
Uh-huh.
of the climatic change.
Okay. Very good.
The meaning. Me emocioné.
And what does it encompass? Well, it's important to mention something else, no? What does this term? What does this term encompass? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's fine with that. Well, variability also. What about time scales longer than 10 years? How would you say that in a more simple way if you had to explain to someone? You just simplify by cutting things. For example, you could say in a period longer than 10 years, okay? Time scales maybe is something that you're not going to be talking about because we are not scientists. Okay, now, second sentence. Climatic was used as an adjective to describe this kind of change. So, as it says, it was just an adjective, right? Do you understand that? It's something like what I was explaining to you before about anthropogenic global warming. It's just an adjective qualifying another word. So the term was just meant to be a change, but referring to climate, okay? Yes? No? Here it says, it's like, for example, when we say there is a political change, an economic change, a climatic change, I don't know what else, which other change, industrial change. It's just an adjective, the word, okay? Then it says, when it was realized that human activities had a potential to drastically alter the climate, the term climate change replaced climatic change. Is that clear, or is it confusing? What does it say in your own words?
Climatic change is cause for human activities.
By climatic change or climate change?
Climatic change.
No.
Climate change.
Replace
climatic change.
Exactly. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then it says climate change was incorporated in the title. Another climate change uses a noun, but that's not important. But can you see that? Can you see? Well, it's interesting. I didn't know this. That first, because many people say climate or climatic, and we don't even know all this happened. So, okay, let's see now causes in the second page. Okay, I'm gonna read this one because it's very easy. The rate at which energy is received from the sun and the rate at which it is lost to space determine the equilibrium, temperature, and climate of Earth. This energy is distributed around the globe by winds, ocean currents, and other mechanisms to affect the climates of different regions. So, is this clear? Yes, no? This is very easy to understand. Only the causes for where we can see how climate change is happening. And now human influences. Can you read, Adriana, please?
In the context of climate
Variation.
climate variation, anthropogenic factors are human activities which affect the climate. The scientific consensus on climate change is that climate is changing and that this change are in large part causes by human activities.
Cost.
Cause.
Mm-hmm.
Science has made enormous efforts
Mm-hmm.
in understanding climate change and its cause.
Its causes.
Its
Causes.
causes.
Mm-hmm.
And is beginning to help develop a strong understanding of current and potential impact that will affect people today and in coming decades.
Mm-hmm. Decades.
This understanding is crucial because it allows decision makers to place climate change in the context of other large challenges facing the nation and the world. There are still some uncertainties
Uncertainties.
and there always will be in understanding a complex system like Earth climate. There is a strong, credible body of evidence
Mm-hmm.
based on multiple lines of research documenting that climate is changing and that this change are in large part causes by human activities.
Caused
Caused by human activities. While much remains to be learned, the core phenomenon, scientific question, and hypotheses have been examined thoroughly and have stood firm in the face of serious scientific debate and careful evaluation of alternative explanation.
What does it say? Okay, wait. Stood. Remember the double O sounds like a U. Stood. And in the and also scientific. Scientific. Hypothesis. Okay. Once again. Okay, try to understand the text. I'm gonna read. Science has made enormous Science has made enormous efforts in understanding climate change and its causes, and is beginning to help develop a strong understanding of current and potential impacts that will affect people today and in coming decades. This understanding is crucial because it allows decision makers to place climate change in the context of other large challenges facing the nation and the world. There are still some uncertainties, and there always will be in understanding a complex system like Earth's climate. There is a strong, credible body of evidence based on multiple lines of research documenting that climate is changing and that these changes are in large part caused by human activities. While much remains to be learned, the core phenomenon, scientific questions, and hypotheses have been examined thoroughly and have stood firm in the face of serious scientific debate and careful evaluation of alternative explanations. Okay, the idea. What is the idea? What does it say here in general? With your own words. I'm not gonna
The
ask you.
science
Uh-huh.
Probably search,
Their trouble?
probably
Struggling.
search.
Of what?
Huh?
Of what? The science and the struggling search?
And their trouble.
Where does it say that? No? Truly?
Exhaustivamente. No,
Ah.
no, entonces está mal. Troll, no, porque está mal empleado.
Es que thoroughly aquí es un adverbio.
Sí, por eso
But you can say and it's, no es there, es it's de la ciencia. The science and it's exhaustive.
exhaustive search.
Search. But search about what?
Search about the climate change.
Okay, very good. Okay, search about the climate change. What else does it say, Adriana? What about where do they think climate change is coming from?
They think that a large part of the climate change is for the human activities.
Exactly. And well, yeah, that's what it mainly says. So this vocabulary is hard to pronounce. These words are long, I know. I want you to read this at home again and again and again aloud, okay? Fuerte, y escuchen cómo pronuncian. So then you can recognize the sounds, the words. I'm going to read it once again. Just one paragraph. I think the most difficult one was this one. So then you can learn, remember these words: climate, cost, science, perhaps journals. What about hypotheses?
Debate, ¿cómo es?
Where does it say?
Debate.
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 Credible.
Which one?
Credible. There is a strong credible.
Ah, yeah, credible. Credible. Well, phenomenon. Sometimes there are tricky words like phenomenon. You only say it like it's like you read it. There's no special pronunciation there, and maybe it seems like it's a difficult word, but it's not. Astute, remember, it's double O. Okay.
What's mean efforts? Esfuerzo?
Efforts. Esfuerzos. Okay, and the last paragraph. Of most concern in these anthropogenic factors is the increase in CO2 levels due to emissions from fossil fuel combustion, followed by aerosols, particulate matter in the atmosphere, and the CO2 released by cement manufacture. Other factors including land use, ozone depletion, animal agriculture and deforestation are also of concern in the roles they play, both separately and in conjunction with other factors in affecting climate, microclimate, and measures of climate variables. A ver, read again this paragraph.
Most concern in these anthropogenic factors is the increase in CO2 levels due to emissions from fossil fuel combustion, followed by aerosols, particulate matter in the atmosphere, and the CO2 released by cement manufacture. Other factors including land use, ozone depletion, animal agriculture, and deforestation are also of concern in the roles they play, both separately, separately, and in conjunction with other factors in affecting climate, microclimate, and measures of climate variables.
Okay.
Measure. What's the meaning?
Measures. Measures is like when you, for example, I can say my measures, the measure of my elbow to my hand is 30 centimeters.
Medida.
You can use it as for referring to the measures of something, or in this context where it says measures as resources, ¿no? Como un recurso o una medida de otra cosa, de un problema. What about which part? Okay, atmosphere. Okay. So what does CO2 mean?
Huh?
What does CO2 mean?
Es fácil de CO2.
¿Ni en español?
Dióxido de carbono.
Carbon dioxide, okay?
Carbon dioxide.
What else? Levels to emissions, fossil fuel combustion. Fossil atmosphere, including landmass and depletion. I saw another word, but I don't remember. Here where it says CO2 levels due to emissions from fossil fuel. What does due mean? What do you understand that word means?
Es como ambos, como conjuntos, ¿no?
Of most concern in these anthropogenic factors is the increase in CO2 levels due to emissions from fossil fuel combustion, that's a really hard word for me, followed by aerosols and CO2 released. If I say, for example, here in Mexico, the increase in CO2 levels is due to so many cars, to cement manufacture. Exactly, debido. Okay, this word is tricky. In other contexts, you mean something different. For example, when I say, make the homework, and the homework is due on Thursday the 17th. That means que es vigente hasta. And so that's another thing. So it doesn't mean the same all the time. You have to read in context and think what it means in each of them. So what does it say here in general? Depletion is a decrease in something. Do you know the word decrease?
Reducir o
Yes. So what do you think about anthropogenic factors? Do you think, how much do you think we are increasing the climate change? Are we or are we? Have you heard that they say that this is not true? Have you heard some word? People who say that climate change is not true, that it is not happening? No?
Mm-mm.
Well, there are some people who say that it's not true.
Oh.
That this
In the
is
next class,
just
the other version.
there is another version, and they say that this is only happening because, well, the forces of nature, because the planet has to change.
The end of the war.
No, well, no. I mean, I think it could be possible because, like before, for example, the extinction of the dinosaurs. Well, no, that was a meteorite, right? No. But some explosions or some things that happened in the past, like tsunamis in the past, there was not there was not so much pollution, and there were no factories and blah 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 blah. It just happened because the planet, I don't know, something happened with it. So that was just the force of nature. I mean, I understand that perhaps construction, manufacturing cement, so many cars, and all these things that are making the CO2 increase, of course, are also part of the problem. But I wouldn't say that we are all the part of the problem. I don't know. Maybe yes, maybe not. Maybe 50-50. So now when someone asks you about climate change, do you think you are going to tell them all this information? Well, more or less, not all of it. But now you know different things. Like, for example, I didn't know
Very
that.
different.
What?
Very different.
Okay, so for homework, I want you to read the text again, okay? And then you make a composition. Well, a book report, saying, what is this about? Well, an article report. In your own words, of course. But don't forget to use some words, for example, or explain what is anthropogenic. You have to make it very easy for someone else to understand, okay? So now your presentations.